However, if you account for progress in technology, and if we are moderately optimistic, we should probably look at 150-year timelines if you are in your 30s, for example, right now, right? Because you should expect technology to become better. And in the case that we see the period of relative peace continue and continue getting this peace longevity dividend, right? Because people are collaborating and working together, and instead of running around looking for resources to feed themselves, they are actually innovating and doing useful work. So if we see that continue, we are likely to see, I would conservatively put it 150 if you are in your 30s.
Joining us here also is our moderator for the day today, Amit, who is working as a head of partnerships at Lapsi Health, and she's also a team member at the Longevity Medicine, Longevity Education Hub as well. And but before we begin our sessions, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the innovators community, which I'm part of, that we're organizing this webinar. Innovators community is a platform for all healthcare enthusiasts, be it whether you're an entrepreneur, investor, researcher, a student, or just anybody who is interested in changing the healthcare landscape and revolutionizing the landscape. It's a platform for all these members to come together, share their ideas, take part in events, organize events, conferences, and even possibly get some deals and discounts to attend various health summits around the world. So please do check out our platform, community.eithealth.eu. Everybody is welcome to join the platform, and this is an exclusive platform where you can find everybody connected to the healthcare landscape. I will post it.
Yes. Yes, and we have today two really esteemed guests. Dr. Alex Zhavoronkiv, who is the CEO of Insilico, and Professor Evelyne Bischof. I just want to make sure that we're all on. That being said, and while we're waiting for you to, turn on your slides and get everything in place, Dr. Alex, how did you end up in this field?
So sure, I've been interested in aging and longevity for many years, since very early childhood, because I think there is nothing more important than aging and longevity. Once you realize that you come into this world, compete, reproduce, take care of your young, and then decline and die, you realize that, it's actually not something that is super hard, right? So people have been doing that for a very long time. So if you wanted to make life a little bit more interesting and challenging, you want to solve that paradigm, right? Because otherwise, nothing really matters. You not get your earnings from this game of life with you, regardless where the path leads and what do you believe in. But if that's the end, well, you probably don't want to have this kind of end. And I realized that despite the many centuries of technological progress, we have not made much progress in aging and longevity, and decided to focus on this field. But originally, since I was born in a country which is neighboring your country, in Latvia, and then moved to Canada, I didn't really have many opportunities to study biotechnology or even biology at a high level, and I decided to first make a little bit of money to ensure that I have the resources to go into biotech, and did my first two bachelor degrees in computer science and in management of information systems, and then worked in a number of IT companies, predominantly computer graphics, so GPU, I made enough money to, comfortably work for a number of years in biotech. Did my grad work in biotech, Johns Hopkins, MSU, and worked from a number of biotech companies, and then decided to finally follow my dream. And 2013, 2014, started focusing on AI for longevity and started Insilico medicine. So I think that aging research is the most altruistic cause anybody can pursue, because if you become a really good doctor and take care of a lot of patients, maybe you'll generate 100,000 life years during your career. You are not exactly saving lives, you're just extending them. And if you develop a drug that extends the life of everybody on the planet for 1 year, you generated 8 billion life years. So your life is technically more impactful if you manage to achieve that grand goal. And now imagine if you can generate 10 years. So you can become multi-billionaire in quality-adjusted life years. So I think that's the most important part to focus on for anybody.
Thank you very much for sharing this. And it's great, to hear, because we're here now in the EAT health community, and it's great to know that a lot of successful Europeans are doing really fascinating things in the world on a huge scale. So thank you very much for sharing this. So that being said, I don't want to take more of your time, because I bet that everybody wants to, have a conversation with you and ask some questions at the end of our meeting today. So I will just let you share the screen and make a quick introduction.
Sure. Perfect. Let me try to, okay, so that's not exactly easy here. So I hope you can see my screen. And I'll try to just show you a few slides about what I do. And as a matter of fact, about what Evelyne does as well, in a way, but I hope that she can also cover a few slides as well, because she is probably one of the most prominent physicians in the world of longevity medicine. And before I start, just wanted to welcome all of you to the ARDD. So we actually started organizing the largest industry event in aging biotechnology globally. And it's in Copenhagen, August 28th to September 1st. So in less than a month, the industry is going to gather there. It's almost sold out. This year, it's going to be more people than space in the Grand Hall of the University of Copenhagen. But it's an epic event. Highly recommend that. If you want to learn about longevity, also highly recommend going to longevity.degree and taking a few courses on longevity medicine that a community of volunteers have developed, free and CME accredited. Also, one of the courses is Introduction to Longevity Biotechnology in Medicine for Investors, so Investing in Longevity 101. And I want to thank many volunteers who joined us and developed this course. As a matter of fact, if you're investing in longevity nowadays, the probability that you are going to lose money is pretty much 99%. And because there have not been any single success in this industry. And failure is everywhere for many centuries. So, and many stories that people tell today as longevity biotechnology companies or researchers, those stories have been told many decades ago, several times. And it's very important to look into the past to understand the future a little bit better. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Insilico. So we decided to build a sustainable biotechnology company before, going after anything super crazy in longevity biotech. Because again, if you take this longevity biotechnology course, longevity investing course, you will realize that there have been many failures along the way to date. People tried to start companies and they either failed or repositioned into biotechs. Like, for example, a very famous case of Zhavoronkiv that went after telomerase originally to evaluate various therapeutic options for extending telomerase and extending human life this way. But later they repositioned into a biotechnology company and became an anti-cancer company. Still publicly traded, but pretty much nothing to do with aging, longevity. Started by one of the famous entrepreneurs, Michael West. So it's very important to understand this history and also understand why those companies fail. And one of the reasons usually is because they run out of money. People get disfocused and go do something else and abandon the project, or just the technology doesn't work. And usually it's the combination of all three. So what I wanted to do is to build a sustainable business model for improving biotechnology productivity and pharmaceutical R&D productivity in general, but also touch on dual-purpose therapeutics that allow you to develop a therapeutic into a drug in a very specific classical disease context, but at the same time go after diseases. So I would call it a very conservative approach to aging research and longevity biotechnology, because you are prioritizing disease first, but looking for dual-purpose therapeutics. So we built a company which now spans pretty much the entire globe. We have a platform that allows you to identify protein targets, promising targets in a variety of diseases, generate small molecule chemistry very rapidly, and then also predict the outcomes of clinical trials very rapidly. And we also use this platform to develop a pipeline of over 30 therapeutic programs using AI. And now some of those therapeutics are in phase 1, phase 2 human clinical trials. Just to put you in perspective, usually it takes you about 12 years to put a drug on the market. And usually you spend about 6 years in preclinical research. So I'll skip a few slides, but just wanted to show that we went through algorithm era, software era, and AI biotechnology era, raised over $400 million from expert biotechnology investors predominantly. So we started as an AI company, went to become a software company. Now a lot of companies are using our tools. And then we started developing our own pipeline of drugs. We have 2 CEOs. So I'm in charge of generative AI and aging research. And Dr. Ren, my co-pilot, also co-CEO and chief science officer, he's in charge of drug discovery. And as a matter of fact, if you don't have this structure, you are either going to be poor in AI or you are not going to be great in drug discovery. So I think that if you want to be AI biotech, you actually need to have basically AI and biotech companies just merge into one. And a little bit about drug discovery. So this is how drugs are being discovered and developed. This slide comes from a very prominent paper by Stephen Paul, How to Improve R&D Productivity, published in Nature Reviews Drug Discovery 2010. So since then, drug discovery actually became more expensive and lengthier because many of the low-hanging fruits have been picked up. And usually it starts from this. So most pharmaceutical companies already know the protein target, this vital mechanism, the building block of life that is misfolded or mutated or overexpressed or you name it. So something in the cellular machinery breaks, you identify this breaking point, and that's usually called the protein target. Imagine that drives cancer, for example, or you have a hypothesis that it drives cancer. So then you usually develop a small molecule drug or a biologic, but still more commonly a small molecule drug. So something that will disable this protein or reduce the level of expression of this protein. And you basically do this by usually trial and error, so high throughput screening, or now you can use intelligent design, so virtual screening, or what we do, we use generative generation. So we imagine novel molecules with the desired properties right away. Usually in a traditional approach, it takes you approximately 12 years to get through from target to market. So here you've got each stage with the number of years here on in the second row that each stage takes, the number of millions of dollars for each stage, and the probability of success at each stage. So usually to get to the end, it costs you about $1.8 billion on average. But that includes failures. It can be significantly cost down if you reduce the failure rate. So basically, if the success rate here is 10%, and you can reduce the, you can increase the probability of success, let's say, to 90%, you can basically do it for just maybe a couple $100 million. Still a lot, right? And still it's going to take you a long time. But what is important is that there is also target discovery, understanding which target to go after, or which set of targets, or which mechanism, what drives the disease. This is usually done in the academic labs, and the probability of success is 1 to 5%. So very, very, very low, 99% failure rate. May take you 10 years, may take you forever, and costs from $0 to several $1 billion. Sometimes you just come up with an idea and throw a dart in the target wheel of possible targets that may work in a disease, and you hit it. So guess, but very rarely it happens. For Alzheimer's, for example, we still don't know what's driving it. For most cancers, we still do not know why and how they happen, and how to treat them properly. So one target doesn't rule all of the cancers. It's very difficult to pick this target. And usually if you succeed at preclinical level, so you validate it on mice, you still have 66% probability of failure in phase 2 human clinical trials. Phase 1, you test safety. Phase 2, you test safety and efficacy. Phase 3, it's a large-scale trial. So here are the probabilities of success. Every time you fail, you lose a lot of money. So that means, the reason I spent so much time on this slide, it means that if you are developing a longevity therapeutic, in theory, it should be even more difficult than developing a normal drug, even if you're addressing the key longevity pathway. So if you discover this target today, only in about 12, 13 years, you might see the drug on the market. And the probability of that happening is less than 1%. So if you don't have a sustainable business model first, you will never be able to get a longevity drug on the market. As a matter of fact, some of the most promising drugs today, like for example, rapamycin, have been on the market for over 20 years. And we still did not implicate them in longevity and didn't start taking them. So after you perform this 12-year cycle successfully and implicate the drug in a disease, you might not still be able to implicate it in longevity. So that's why we don't see those longevity therapeutics, because it's a very low probability event, and also costs you a lot of money and requires a lot of effort. So far we've managed to, with my algorithms and approaches, to complete phase 1 from beginning to the end. Now we're in phase 2 with a drug that is going after fibrosis. We also looked at this process as an age-associated process, so I hope that this target also may work in aging. Fingers crossed. Some evidence there, but we've managed to do this. So now I'll skip a bunch of slides, right? So we have a system that allows you to identify targets, generate chemistry, and predict the outcomes of clinical trials. So trying to compress and improve the probability of this lengthy drug discovery and development process. We've demonstrated a number of proof of concept by publishing multiple research papers. So one where we recently, if you want to just read one, AlphaFold accelerates artificial intelligence-powered drug discovery, where we identified new target for hepatocellular carcinoma, didn't have a crystal structure, used Google DeepMind's AlphaFold crystal from the database, gave it to our system called Chemistry 42 that imagines new molecules with the desired properties, got respectable hits, fed those hits in Chemistry 42, got very respectable hits, and tested them all the way into cancer, and it worked. And the entire study took 50 days in total, if you account the work that was done. And then it took 6 months to publish. So that's how fast you can go. And now what we are trying to do, as I've mentioned, we're trying to look at a traditional pharmaceutical approach, but instead of trying to argue whether aging is a disease, should we go after aging, why don't we go after the drugs that work? So if a drug works in aging, it should work in some disease. So the question is that which disease do you want to purpose it to, and to ensure that you get the clinical approval. So you actually should go disease first, right? But discover the drug using aging research. That's what we're trying to do, to find those targets that are located kind of on the intersection of aging and disease and are driving both. So if you are addressing a disease, you might also go after aging. And the mindset here is very similar to finding another rapamycin, but from scratch and using an intelligent approach. And one of the papers that you might want to focus on if you have limited time is this one. So hallmarks of aging-based dual-purpose disease and age-associated targets, where we use AI to identify a bunch of targets that are implicated in aging and disease. Usually they would be called something like, mTOR, AKT1, SIRT1, IGF1. Those are very well known, and that's why they're in blue. So very high confidence, high drugability. But we also structured them, the other targets, by different mechanisms of aging and by the level of risk, right? So how new these are. So green would be very new, moderately new, so severely new, and also how difficult they are to drug, because some of those targets are just very difficult to develop molecules for. And created this wheel, so now you can actually use this paper, and if you want to go from scratch, you can pick some of those targets and try to get them into diseases or aging. And I'll skip a few slides. So we have one case where we managed to identify a target going after fibrosis, generated small molecules for it, and went all the way into phase 2 human clinical trials after completing phase 0 and phase 1. Which is pretty cool, very rare event. So, fingers crossed. And right now, and we have now the entire portfolio of drugs that are going after different diseases out of our AI pipeline. And now I'm almost at the end of my talk here. So now we thought, okay, well, can we develop even better AI to identify possible targets in aging and disease, at the same time develop an aging clock, so a biomarker of aging that can be very interpretable and could be deconvoluted into those targets. So we can later use this biomarker to also measure the effects of those dual-purpose therapeutics. And we decided to develop a multimodal transformer, so it's kind of like GPT, so generative pre-trained transformer. And we call it Precious 1 GPT. So it's clocks plus target discovery at the same time. And we decided to build a fully automated lab to very quickly come up with hypotheses about targets in a variety of different diseases and test them. And when I saw this paper by DeepMind called Multimodal Transformer on Gatto, I was blown away. So that's me sitting at the Gordon Research Conference on aging and just, making a funny face saying that, yeah, this is the future. By the way, that was before ChatGPT significantly, right? And this is the future as well. And what we came up with in my team, we decided, why don't we come up with multimodal transformers that can take in multiple different data types across multiple species and create one clock that can rule them all, and at the same time be interpretable, and you can identify some promising targets from it. So we published a paper. Again, you can actually look it up. It's called Precious 1 GPT, explaining how we did it. So we used methylation data and expression data to build an aging clock, and created a multimodal transformer regressor, and then transferred the weight onto a multimodal transformer classifier that's trained on diseases. And we have a system called Pandomics that's, again, industry standard now for target discovery. We can now use this Pandomics to query this multimodal transformer classifier to identify those dual-purpose targets, arrange them by novelty, confidence, commercial tractability, and do it in an automated fashion. So, and you can see that the performance of each individual clock, for example, for methylation or expression, is not great, and combined score actually might be even lower than just using just pure methylation, and that's not as accurate as current standards of, well, not standard of care, but standard methylation clocks that are in use today, but it's highly interpretable. So, ChatGPT is also not super accurate, but it's very intelligent. So this is a very intelligent clock that you can use to identify targets. And we decided to also build a lab that goes through the entire drug discovery and development process and can be run by this GPT. So this GPT can actually tell the robot which drugs to use on which cells. And I'll just show you a very, very quick video of what we've built. So this is actually where I'm sitting today. That's our Insilico lab in Shanghai. That's a dry lab. And here we've got a large number of scientists working on simulation, on controlling various vendors to do many experiments. And if you're not familiar with China's geography, 1.5 hours drive from Shanghai or 30 minutes by train is Suzhou. A very epic place, by the way, highly recommended. The mayor of Suzhou has H-index of 76. We don't get any kind of significant support from there, but just very amazing to see how this area is developing. So we got this building, I gutted it. And over the course of COVID pandemic, when everybody was quarantined, we were actually working, bubbled in this space, sleeping there, living there, gas leaks, people still stayed there. It's me sleeping on the couch. And this is today. So you can enter using your face recognition. So the lab knows you once you enter. You feel like on the spaceship. Here on the to your right, you see dimmed windows. You can undim them, see the robots, see how they work if it's not confidential. I also have a pretty epic presentation facility. So unfortunately, I'm not there today. Because if you are in documentary filmmaking, you can apply for footage and get our footage in any documentary movie. So we opened it December 29th last year. So it's already 8 months in production. And we can see the robots. And this is the workflow. That's real footage and real workflow. So you throw in tissues or cells. The robot picks it up, microplates it, grinds it, does quality control, no mycoplasma, no fungus, passes it into a different room. There we have autonomous guided vehicles that take multiple routes. Part of the sample goes into the incubator and waits. And the part of the sample goes into the imaging station, and you get many types of imaging. So you get very high resolution, high content imaging of the sample. Part of the sample goes into the NGS prep room. So you prepare the libraries for whole genome methylation transcriptomics. Remember those data types that we trained AI on? And then these libraries are processed using Illumina sequencer, and the data goes into AI. So there we've developed a unique AI layer where this precious GPT plus Pandomics plus a few other tools select the promising targets automatically, and then select the promising molecules automatically, depending on what you wanted to, depending on your risk profile and what you want to achieve. Then you pick those compounds from the compound hotel. They get automatically decapped, placed on liquid handler here, and there the robot prepares them for the transfer onto the cells that you've put in originally. You can also do multiple assays with those, especially with expensive compounds. And then you aliquot them onto the samples from the incubator, the currently incubator, and then put them put those samples back into the incubator and wait. So 6 hours, 24 hours, 72 hours. So wait until the cells react to the compound, and then do another round of imaging, methylation, transcriptomics. And then you feed this data back into AI. So there it gets punished if it gets the targets wrong, and rewarded if it gets the target right. And then also for targets that don't have known chemistry, we can, want to score very high, we can prosecute them to using CRISPR and other technologies to see if they work. So this way we can actually identify some promising targets, and that's pretty much allows for scientific serendipity as well to happen. So we see if there are any kind of deviations from what we expect. And this lab can work 24/7, doesn't make a lot of errors. And for those of you who worked in the lab before, you know that if you need to micropipette something into 96 well plates even, you always make an error. Well, I'm always made an error. So here you remove most of the human errors and also biases when target selection, when you select the targets. And now, if you like, you should also look at the biomarker consortium that is recently launched in the West, and in China also they managed to launch a biomarker consortium, which is pretty interesting. Cited a lot of our papers. So here I'd like to kind of stop and explain that, longevity medicine is, of course, a combination of biomarkers and currently available therapeutics and preventative techniques. But in the future, you are going to most likely have those dual-purpose therapeutics that longevity physicians will be able to play with. So right now, the time is now to prepare. So it will take a few more years, but now there is an entire longevity biotechnology industry. Many startups are pursuing something similar approaches. So we should be able to hopefully see the revolution in the next few years. What I really want to encourage everybody is to also focus on one very important aspect of human development, which is peace. Because right now we see that there is a lot of tension and even like the dramatic outright wars out there. And when that happens, science stops. So you're likely to live very short lives, even if you are not affected by the war directly. But right now, there is a lot of geopolitical tensions between, U.S., China, and other countries. And I think that this is fundamentally bad. So we really need to have peace in order to do this work internationally. So that's another aspect that I never thought that I would be engaging in, but now I'm trying to educate people on the benefits of having a peaceful life, because we need peace to continue working.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to not only hear you, see you, but also virtually visit your lab and hear about the work that you're doing. And especially, as always, for me as somebody who was, who is a European, to see Europeans building, grand things on the other side of the world. With that being said, if I may ask you and Professor Bischof, you both are in Asia right now. So what could we, Europeans learn from what is happening out there? I mean, of course, you're part of it, but also maybe there are other things that you didn't mention.
Sure, Evelyne, please go ahead. And we cannot see you.
Yes, thank you so much. So what is happening is that unfortunately I cannot connect to the camera. Amit, maybe you want to comment on that later on. But thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for including me in the conversation. And I think, in terms of China and Asia, for everybody who is in the medical, medtech, biotech field, it is a very, very important place to be and very important place to learn from. It's a very vibrant and dynamic place with a lot of innovation and also a lot of opportunities and possibilities, and also a lot of collaborations that are spreading from and coming into this area. So I guess, especially for healthy longevity medicine or longevity science, it is a very important place, as it is allowing also a very multidisciplinary approach to not only to the neurosciences, also the basic part of it, in labs at a very high level, but also in the clinics. So myself, I'm a clinician in a university clinic here and have been for many, many years, going back and forth between Switzerland and Shanghai. And I see also this tremendous progress and also tremendous opening of new ways of treating patients, dealing with patients, running clinical trials in those institutions. And it's so important because it brings everything together, right? It's an entire chain from the lab through the translation and then finally up to the patient. So very vibrant and very important hub, as to say, globally.
Thank you.
So yeah, just wanted to add to that. In order to understand what's happening in China, for example, you need to come and see, right? So you need to come and visit Shenzhen, Shanghai, Suzhou, and a bunch of cities that you've never heard about, right? I've never heard about. But you go there and they are pretty much like templated. You've got a beautiful lake, you've got a bunch of skyscrapers around it, beautiful parks, and very fast trains. So that go 400 kilometers an hour and get you from city to city in 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. Extremely spacious train stations, so very modern. Also, they went electric, and right now many cars, you just don't hear them on the street. And many of those cars are made locally. So, and some of them look phenomenally well, right? So I don't know how they do it, but those are spaceships. And with names I cannot even pronounce. So sometimes I feel like, Ayn Rand, who landed on the shores of New York in 1920s, if you read Atlas Shrugged, and it's phenomenal progress. So the country is definitely booming internally. There are, nothing is without problems. So there are different economic problems, different social problems, but they've managed to also eliminate corruption in some areas because they went all digital and it's not easy to corrupt anybody over WeChat. And the level of progress here is pretty dramatic. So, again, there are always problems, but it's very important to understand that it's better than it used to be. And what you see in the media, people like to focus on the negative, but and nobody reacts to positive. That's why when I write, for example, a positive article, nobody cares. You add additional, drama to it, and people react to it very, very strongly. A lot of response, and I think that right now people hate each other for no reason. Very often, just because they haven't been there, or because somebody became successful. It's kind of like your inferior brother started winning Olympics, right? And you don't like that. And suddenly you feel negative. So I think that right now what we need to focus on is, how to join forces against diseases and especially aging, and figure out how to avoid the war. And again, I'm not saying that, China is any kind of paradise or it's better in any way, but it's not as bad as people perceive. And it's very serendipitous that Eva and I found ourselves in Shanghai today. We very, very rarely are in the same place together. But I travel 100% of the time, so you get to see the difference. And it's very important to go and see for yourself.
Thank you very much, Professor and Dr. Alex, Professor Evelyne. And also, you'll be in Europe at the end of the month. So if someone's in Copenhagen, maybe you'll get a chance to visit the conference that Dr. Alex has mentioned. We can also put that in the chat. But with that being said, we're talking about longevity medicine, and Professor Evelyne has been working and doing fabulous and amazing things. But maybe we can also learn a little bit about longevity medicine. So and optimal performance. When do we reach it? How can we extend it? And could you tell us a little bit more, Professor?
Evelyne?
About healthy longevity medicine? Right, yes, with great pleasure. I will try to be brief, although I'm not always succeeding on that. So healthy longevity medicine is an amazing field that is bringing the innovations that we see in various fields of biotechnology and neurosciences into the practice. And although the clinical approaches are still, interventional approaches are, say, in the process of development, the diagnostic part, Dr. Alex mentioned the biomarkers. Now there are really global, very credible consortia. Now we have very good tools that hopefully soon will also be approved, biological aging clocks for actually as primary measurement for clinical trials, so that we then actually can prove that the interventions are or are not useful, efficient, and or safe. But I don't think we have to focus on the debate on extension of the lifespan itself. We always have to combine health span and lifespan and see it as one unit, because extension of a lifespan without extension of health span is not exactly what we want, meaning we can prolong a life of a patient even on an ECMO machine, right, for months and years probably, but this is not exactly what we want. We want a healthy lifespan. We want a person to be at the optimal level of performance for a specific biological age and chronological age of that person. And if we can get this target extended, and probably we can, and at this point of time we already can significantly, then we can reach goals that are at the one hand individual. So healthy longevity medicine is so extremely personalized that it's 3D individualized, because it's not only for one person, but also at a specific point of time. Healthy longevity medicine is a little bit obsessed with time measurement and age measurement. And at the same time, it's going very global, right? Because we know what are the global problems related to aging and age-related diseases. We know how much that can actually impact the entire way of our sick care management, to implement more of the healthy longevity medicine approaches into those areas as well. So basically targeting and preventing the risks of the diseases rather than only early detect the diseases, so the early primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention, and or only the reactive approach. So that is a little bit of an overview of the overarching goal of healthy longevity medicine.
Thank you very much for sharing this. And you've mentioned biological age, chronological age, and I see there's one other question that is pretty similar in the chat that we have. So please keep the questions coming in, by the way. And so could you tell us a little bit about the biological versus chronological clocks, and how can we evaluate our biological age? Is it even possible? Are there more clocks than these two?
Yes, so maybe I can give a little bit of the basics, right? And then Dr. Alex can give us an overview of the future, because he is the person who is actually leading and driving the field. Biological age is the age of our organism point, but this age is related to our physiological, cellular, genetic age. So basically, all the objective measurements that are pinpointing to our body make up our biological age. Meanwhile, The chronological age is basically just the age calculated from our date of birth. So the age in our passports, if we are not exactly lying in it. So that's chronological age versus biological age. Can we measure it? By now, yes, we can. And the first development in that field came from Steve Horvath in the early 2013s. In the year 2015 and after, we had a major progress with the development or the implementation of deep learning into the clock area. So we had the deep aging clocks that came out, and they have been very well described, very well published, and are very applicable. And then a variety of biological aging clocks came also later on that are targeting, as we said, the different parts of the organism. So there are clocks, as you know, that are targeting primarily the blood age. We have clocks that are targeting methylation. I think they are well known to almost everyone, epigenetic aging clocks. We also have photogenic aging clocks, so from the features of the face and the skin. And of course, new ones are coming. There's microbiome aging clock and behavioral aging clock. We always have to remember that our organism is also, or our health also contains the mental health. So subjective aging clock is very important. And just as a glimpse in the future, what we would like to have, because the question is always coming, or at least was coming a few years ago, which of the clocks are, or is the best? The question and the answer here is probably the combination of all, but we still don't know how they scale into one unit. And also another thing is to target more and more specific organs. So being able to measure the biological age of a heart, of a liver, brain specifically, is also very valuable for the clinical practice rather than just the general age of the body. So I guess the development, and this is also very well described in some of the papers that Dr. Alex mentioned from the Chinese biomarker consortium, the targeting of specific organ biological age is probably the next big thing in the clinical applicability.
Thank you very much. I know that death is inevitable and you cannot really escape something that is inevitable, unfortunately, but and it seems that we can live longer. How long can we, how long can we live as beings?
So, sure. Well, I can take it. So currently, nobody lived longer than 122 and a half. And the woman that lived to 122 and a half died around 20 years ago. So far, nobody has beaten that record if we assume that the date of birth of that woman was recorded properly. That's Jean Calment. And currently, the longest living people alive are, 117, 119. And there are very few of them. So, and none of the really kind of super agers pursued any specific lifestyle, took a specific drug, or has any specific genetic predisposition. So they're just lucky. So if you are very, very lucky, and if you are not genetically predisposed to some specific disease, you are likely to live to those extremes, right, that I've mentioned. However, if you account for progress in technology, and if we are moderately optimistic, we should probably look at 150-year timelines if you are in your 30s, for example, right now. Right? Because you should expect technology to become better. And in the case that we see the period of relative peace continue and continue getting this peace longevity dividend, right? Because people are collaborating and working together, and instead of running around looking for resources to feed themselves, they are actually innovating and doing useful work. So if we see that continue, we are likely to see, well, I would conservatively put it 150 if you are in your 30s. But is it going to be youthful state? That's a good question, right? In the current paradigm, if you're looking just at pharmaceuticals and biologics, so traditional approach, you are likely to see the 150, but the level of frailty is going to be very high. At the same time, the level of automation is going to increase dramatically. So you're going to have, Tesla bots and the other humanoid robots taking care of you. So you might actually enjoy life much more than people tend to believe is possible. And entertainment options are going to increase dramatically. Plus, you're going to get multiple augmentations, including probably some augmentations to your vision, to your hearing, to the brain faces. So we're talking about, 20, 30-year horizons. It's very difficult to plan beyond that. But I would conservatively set our longevity expectations for, whatever decisions you're making today at 150, if there is relative peace. If we see a major war, right, for example, between U.S. and China, or trade wars go to extreme, we're going to see a slowdown and your overall well-being and welfare is going to deteriorate.
Well, thank you very much. I guess we still have to work on, as Alphaville had the song Forever Young, we still have a lot of work to do on that. But there's hope, I can see. Thank you very much for sharing your answer. I just want to be mindful of your time, Dr. Alex and Professor Evelyne. Just want to make sure you have a couple of more minutes to respond to at least some of the questions. I guess you will have to come back for more and for another session again. But will you have a couple of more minutes to just answer some of the questions?
Absolutely, yes, from my side.
Great.
Yeah, I can go for another 15 minutes if necessary. Yeah.
Wonderful. So that being said, I'll pass on the mic to Krishna to, announce something. So if you could.
Thank you very much, Amit and Alex and Prof. Evelyne. It was wonderful to talk about the longevity medicine. I personally am not from a medical background, so it was really interesting to see all the developments that have been happening and all the insights that you shared with us, with the audience over here. But before we jump into the Q&A, I would like to request everybody to please take a minute or two to share us your feedback of today's session. This feedback session is extremely important to us because you can suggest the topics that you want to hear in the next sessions with us. And longevity medicine was one of the topics suggested to us a few months ago. And here we are. While we fill this feedback form, I would like to take a moment to share about the upcoming events and conferences where the innovators community is offering discounts on tickets. We have a tech barbecue in Copenhagen on September 13th and 14th, where entrepreneurs from the Nordic region will gather and you can interact and network with them. And we have as we're talking about longevity and aging, we have a Silver Eco and Aging Festival in Cannes in September 18th. That is, as you say correctly, there's many people from the longevity sector and the aging sector will be there, and you can check out the event and register yourself for there. And lastly, the MedTech World Summit. It's a very well-known international health summit around the world, which is happening this year on October 19th in Malta. And for all of these events, we have special discounts as an exhibitor, as a participant. And we encourage you to check out our platform, community.eithealth.eu, and see if you can join us at the event there. And I'll share the link in the chat over here for you to check out the events. So now that we are done, and I hope you've answered the feedback form, and I will pass the floor back to Amit. So let's answer a few interesting Q&As.
Thank you very much. So
Visit community.eithealth.eu to join our community and shape the healthcare landscape with us. For more such videos, subscribe to our channel.